Café and Networking Podcast promotes successful business owners, business experts throughout the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, known as the King of Networking, connecting people from my unique communication lab in Brazil. And today we talk with Sharyl West Loeung, and she's joining us from Waco, Texas. Sharyl, co-founder of Kardia House Consulting, teaches generous communication to resist polarization, create organizational health, relational wholeness. Kardia House offers communication consulting, focus on strategic needs-based communication, relationship building, diverse and inclusive. So Sharyl, how do you define allyship?
Thanks, Tom, for having me, first of all. Allyship is something that I define as a lifelong process. Many people in the DEI sphere, that when they think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, they think about allyship as something that they can claim for themselves and say, because I am a progressive person and I care about racial equality, I am an ally.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't believe that I get to claim the label of ally. I believe that in building relationships and relationship building, that other people decide that I'm an ally
Mm-hmm.
and give me that label in their context. So when people have been marginalized in some way, they need someone or want someone in their corner that has some power,
Right.
or has some privilege, and they get to decide who they feel safe with and
Mm-hmm.
who isn't going to make them feel like they're in a situation where they can't trust and they can't be their full selves and have the kind of relational wholeness that you want to see. And so because of that, I don't get to walk into a situation and say, oh, well, I'm an ally.
Mm-hmm.
I am given that by someone, and it's fluid. So in one situation, I may be an ally, and then I walk into another situation and I have to earn it all over again. So that's really important when I think about allyship.
Well, you mentioned the word that I think it's really encompassing and important is trust. Because we just can't go up. We can't go down to the store and buy 4 pounds of trust. It doesn't happen, right? And allyship, as you've just described it, the same thing. It's not something that you walk in, and I agree with you, because in my networking, one of the things I say in networking is that I hope to create allies, to have allies. So, most people think of networking as I want to sell something, I want to buy something. That's not it. For me, I want an ally. I want to learn from somebody. And to the point is being understood or understanding others comes from obviously the first contact, and then understanding them as a whole.
Yeah. So one of the things that I believe is the basis of where we break down as a society and really polarization happens is that in our communication, we forget that we are all making bids to be understood.
Right.
And to be seen and to be known. And so what happens is when I feel like I'm not seen or understood, I either get more defensive or offensive, just depends on what my natural inclination is.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget that the other person has the same tendencies.
Right.
And so then I'm offended because they're not responding the way I want them to. And so then we begin to move into a more polarized way of being, in that we look for teams instead.
Well, we've talked about, and you're mentioning really at sort of the personal level, but what you do in your consulting, you help companies, corporations do that, right? As an organization.
Yes, because one of the things that happens for corporations is their communication to, let's say, we're making a change. We're talking change management now. We're making a change and we want to control how people respond to this change. And again, with relationship building, which matters to corporations too, trust matters to corporations too, we send out a really vague email, let's say, and then everyone gets very nervous and anxious. And instead of just being clear, because we believe Brene Brown talks about this, compassion
Right.
compassionate communication is clear communication. But instead, we do this vague thing, and then people want to know, wait, who is being talked about in this email?
Right.
Who did the thing?
Right.
Who's in trouble? Who's getting laid off? And then we start this little rumor mill, and we're talking in silos, or we're blaming each other, who's in trouble. And instead, better management techniques, for one, is that we learned how to communicate with our people before there's a crisis. That's really important, that the crisis management that's happening is that we have communication tools and a relationship so that it's working beforehand. But secondly, that we're able to do a better job of just being clear
Right.
and honest up front. And so what we help people understand is how to do that and realize that you're not giving away too much if you do it in a way that is planned and concise, and figure out exactly what it is that you're trying to do and where you're going.
And that's
So
part
we
of the
believe in
onboarding.
generous
That's
communication.
onboarding, even in, if you're talking about a corporation, but today we have more and more, we see a person starting their own company. So this should be the baseline for starting anything, right? It's just what you mentioned, the way to communicate.
Yes, so we call it generous communication, which is both systemic, but also in individual relationships again, because we forget that corporations are people.
Right.
There's a whole Supreme Court ruling on that, actually. So, and in generous communication, we kind of reframe conversations that often are aggressive in tone by returning to something more generous and compassionate. And by doing that, we practice these charitable listening skills, and we're able to be a non-judgmental presence, to be curious in our questioning, and that really helps people kind of de-escalate conflict and take on avoiding either or thinking of polarization.
Right.
And like the dualistic mindset, and looking for shared values, so that even though we're different, we can come around some common ground and work towards something different. So, but it takes some mindfulness.
Yeah, it's back to what you said at the beginning. It's wanting to share in an open fashion. Many people start communicating in a defensive way. And the polarization, unfortunately, has brought us to that. So it's either defensive or aggressive. And communication just doesn't get the second step. So just learning what you said, and back to the point of trust, of engagement, right? Understanding diversity and inclusion. Those are important parts of learning, even before somebody even opens their mouth and says anything or writes anything or shares anything. So I think we do have to be aware of the part that is confrontational and try to reduce that energy. But Sharyl,
so at Kardia House, I would say at Kardia House Consulting, we believe that it's a practice and that it takes time. It's not something you can do overnight, which makes it something that people don't always feel like it's a 3-step quick formula.
Right.
But it's something we can all do if we just learn. It's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of practice, but Kardia House Consulting has been able to show people how to do that.
Yeah, you can't buy trust, and communication doesn't happen immediately. So to our listeners, Sharyl, how can our audience find you and find Kardia House?
Well, the easiest way probably is to look at our website. It's Kardia house.com. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. It's at kardia.house. And then we have a online learning community, which I'm really excited about. And when we talk about practice, it's a way for people to get in a community with people they don't know.
Right.
And we work on some of these things. We have posts. We do daily reminders, different exercises. You can join smaller communities within that. And so when you go to the website, you'll see it on the front page. You can also, if you have a group within your organization and you want to have a closed container, you can join that and go through some courses and things like that in a closed container within the online learning community, that online platform. So
Very
that's
good.
also available to you.
Well, something for everybody, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you again for sharing, Sharyl.
Thank you for having me, Tom. It was fun to be here and to get to know you a little bit.
Thank you. That's the essence of success in the world today, is knowing others.
It is. That's why I love social entrepreneurship, is you just keep trying to learn a little bit about the world and see what you can do to make it a little bit better.
And that's the way it goes. And to our audience, it is Sharyl West Loeung. First name is Sharyl, SharyLWest. And the last name is Loeung. Loeung. Find her also on LinkedIn and KardiaHouse.com. KardiaHouse.com. Café and Networking is brought to us by Focus Semi-Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information at their site, focusmi.com. Thanks for listening until the next time here at Café and Networking Podcast.